Well, do you have a UFO hotspot bucket list? Maybe it's a visit to Roswell or Area 51. Author and filmmaker Craig Campobasso has put together the definitive hunter's bucket list of UFO, legendary and active UFO alien hotspots around North America. He's put together a terrific book. We're about to be joined by Craig. Hi, Craig. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Dean?
Pretty good. So the name of the book, firstly?
Is the UFO Hotspot Compendium, all the places to visit before you die or are abducted.
Sounds
How's
great.
that?
Sounds
Isn't that
great.
great? I didn't even come up with that. That somebody at the publishing house came up with that last part, and I said that's just brilliant. I
Yeah,
mean, I loved it. I loved it.
should be made available at all tourist outlets as well.
Yes, right.
But so what prompted you to put together a guide like this?
Well, after I wrote the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac and it became a bestseller, the publisher, they all got together. There's sort of three publishing entities. There's the main big publisher, there's the intermediate, and then there's MUFON. So the intermediate and the big publisher approached me and said, would you like your next book? We would like to do sort of like a UFO bucket list kind of things for the UFO tourist to have a guide to go out, know the story, the when, the where, the dates that it happened. Are there still UFOs visiting there today? Were there any aliens or cryptids involved? What are people seeing? And do these in-depth stories, but then also give everybody a recap of the current up-to-date investigations that were either done in the conclusion by Project Blue Book or the Condom Committee or MUFON itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of these cases were done by former MUFON people that I worked with on some of the cases, and then some are that. So once we decided that's what we were going to do, we had the head of MUFON send out an email to all the state directors in MUFON and ask them to nominate their favorite hotspots. So that's how we compiled them. And then we got to work. Now, I had a few of my own favorite hotspots as well. One that is semi-known and one that is not so known. And I definitely included those two. And the one that's not so known had ships landing in the middle of the day, ships landing at night, grays running around the property, reptilians hissing,
Wow.
and them finding their footprints. Paranormal activity beyond the norm. There was a tree on this property called the alligator tree because of its bark. It looked like an alligator skin, and this was a portal. And the wife that lived on this property, now this is called the Bradshaw Ranch, and
Yep.
it's in the Verde Valley just outside of Sedona. It is in the middle of nowhere. And if you ever want to go to a place where the veils between the dimensions are like paper thin,
Mm-hmm.
this is the place to go, because when the Bradshaws lived there, Linda Bradshaw, the wife, she brought on a UFO researcher, Tom Dongo. I don't know if you've ever had Tom on your show. He's
No.
great. He's a Sedona. He's been there forever. He knows everything about Sedona. So they did investigations for over 3 years. And Linda's son as well, who was in his 20s at the time. And so when they would snap pictures or videotape, whether it was day or night, they would see into another dimension. In one videotape, they actually saw a dinosaur,
Wow.
right? And in another one, they saw telephone poles and regular pigs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, there's no regular pigs in Sedona. All they have are wild javelinas. that run around. I mean, literally, if you're out early in the morning, they're running down every street, right? Causing havoc
Yep.
in
Yep.
people's yards and all of that. So, um, so they had that. They at night they were taking pictures, and they got a sight of a man's face. I actually have it in the book,
Mm-hmm.
right? This photograph of a man who wasn't there, right? And then there was another photograph that was taken, and near his leg was a very tiny blue lit spaceship that had these little arms off with little balls of light on the end.
Right. Right.
But it was minuscule, right? It was like the size of a quarter, or even a half dollar. It was somewhere between those two sizes. So there, I mean, and then they have a windmill, and people who are near the windmill have missing time, right?
Okay. Yep.
Including there was also an albino female Sasquatch that visited the ranch every night, and Linda would feed her
Mm-hmm.
and put out fruit and vegetables out by the horse corrals. And in the morning, all the food would be gone, and there would be sticks and stones on the plate as gifting
Yep.
back to her. And she really believed that that she called her Big Girl, and that Big Girl actually protected her mares who were pregnant, because all the other ranches, they were grays or some type of alien were taking the fetuses of all their mares.
Right. Right.
So yeah, amazing,
It
just amazing.
it sounds like that particular ranch is some sort of spaghetti junction of time events, and
Yes.
you've got your prehistoric uh, to present day and everything in between.
We have everything. I have a friend of mine who works for MUFON who lives there, and he recently told me that he put cameras all around the property and left them there for 3 months. And he said, I checked all of the photos. He said, do you know, during that entire time, not one animal was seen on camera? Do you know how uncanny that is?
Yeah.
Those animals know, stay away from this strange property. He said he didn't catch anything. The only thing that he caught was this energy that looked like it was pixelated, and it was moving
Mm-hmm.
erratically like this, and it went behind a tree and it disappeared.
Yeah. It,
So yeah.
do you know whether Bradshaw is in alignment with, say, Skinwalker Ranch and also Stardust Ranch down in Arizona? Seems like there might be some.
Well, I don't know if it's I would say um Stardust Ranch. I have driven by Stardust Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Two of my affiliates actually, when I forget the gentleman's name that owned it.
John Edmonds, he recently
That's
passed
it, John.
away. Yeah.
That's right, he did. John Edmonds. I have a little bit about Stardust in UFO Hotspot as well, but they actually went and were allowed to go onto the property with him as well. And one of my friends made a nice donation towards his horse rescue
Mm-hmm.
because he has horses
Yep.
there. So he invited them on, and they said, now I saw from other TV shows that have been there what the inside of the house looked like. And it was pretty creepy,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah.
pretty dank and creepy. And they told me that when they were sitting in the living room, like where the fireplace was, they said it felt like it was a breathing wall of evil,
Wow. Yeah. He.
and that they couldn't wait to get out of there and all of that. And I mean, his story about killing a bunch of these grays and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, that were there. But I do recall something. I haven't read his book for a while, but it was something about on a certain day, like every 45 days, we'll say, they would come.
Mm-hmm.
It was a number of days, and then they would show up and have that. And they said that they did feel stuff also in the very back of the property. They
Yep.
felt a lot of really scary stuff. Now we're lucky because Skywalker Ranch, we have a TV show. And
Right.
we're actually we've seen 3 seasons of all of the things that they've done on that property.
Mm-hmm.
And we even got John Alexander, or they got John Alexander, who did some of the original stuff with Bigelow on camera a couple of times to say what they did back in the day.
Yep.
And then we had some of the people that were there early on with the Shermans when they owned it, when that sort of portal opened up and this giant wolf came out, and
Gosh.
yeah, like a giant wolf. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it got the name. I think Brandon, who owns it, is the one who named it Skinwalker Ranch. I don't remember if that's how it
Well,
was named, but I think so.
yeah. Well, Bigelow, according to John Edmonds, when he was alive, and we interviewed him a couple of times, John Bigelow was trying very hard to buy Stardust before he actually acquired Skinwalker, and they just couldn't agree on terms. But otherwise, Stardust may have been the ranch that was getting all the publicity. But I think the creepiest story that John told me about Stardust was the doppelganger episode where he and his wife drove into Phoenix to have lunch, and he brought the car around the front of the house, and his wife got in the car, and they got to the restaurant, and they sat there for an hour, and his wife said, "Look, I've got to go to the bathroom." So she went to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden John's phone lit up and his wife's name came up, so he answered it, and as soon as he answered it, she said, "Well, where did you go? You just left me standing here. You've taken off and just left me behind." And John said, "What are you talking about? You were sitting here opposite me at the dining table. You're in the bathroom." She says, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." So he got up, he checked the bathroom, and she was nowhere to be found. And classic doppelganger story. That just creeped me out.
Wow.
It creeped me out.
That's
Something. Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, he, by the way, was asking $6 million for that
Mm-hmm.
little tiny ranch that
Yep.
is not worth that amount of money. I think the real amount it was worth was somewhere between 250 and 350. But
Mm-hmm.
even with the paranormal stuff,
Yeah.
nobody's going to pay $6 million for a plot of dirt,
No. No.
right? That kind of thing. And there was well, I think to some of the researchers and things, that there wasn't enough to be proven to buy it for that amount of
Yep.
money,
Yep.
that kind of thing. So um but anyway, but that's one of the more creepier places.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you've mentioned a couple of your favorite hotspots. Another one I gather would be the Giant Rock.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I have been fascinated way back in the like 70s. I started hearing about the Integratron, these people going out to the Integratron and just telling me these amazing experiences they were having. And so for years I heard about it. And then finally I was invited to go, and I went, and it was really um, eye-opening for me. I just loved it. And then I started to learn more and more. Um, excuse me. When I met Dr. Frank Stranges, who wrote Stranger at the Pentagon, is when I learned a whole lot more about the Integratron.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think we went out there together in 2005 because they had asked us to speak. They were gonna kick back up the old George Van Tassel's UFO retro conventions, right?
Mhm.
And they couldn't hold them at Giant Rock, but they could at the Integratron, right? So we went out there and we were speaking to the sisters and to Barbara Harris, who is the Giant Rock historian. So, so over the years, I talked to Barbara about the history of Giant Rock and everything that went on there, which is way beyond anything I had ever dreamed of. And and then I learned about the Integratron a lot of through Dr. Frank, because when we were there, he says, "Well, yeah, back in the day, I emceed all of the conventions every year." And
Okay.
I was like, "You did?" And
Wow.
he's like, "Yeah." And then I have pictures now of him at these conventions and all of that. And these conventions were held to raise money to build the Integratron,
Mhm.
right? So so it's one of my favorite stories, but the coolest thing of all is one of my longtime dear friends for 20 years was there with George Van Tassel when he first moved under the rock with his family, and she was there when he began channeling.
Right. Wow.
So I have firsthand account of what happened during that time and throughout his life, because they were good her and her husband were very close with George. And so so I went and I did the deepest dive I could with a historian, with Integratron Archives, um, with the sisters who now own it, including all of Dr. Frank's information
Mhm.
and everything from Denise Ebersol. And it just gives you a giant picture of everything that went on there and how fantastic it is. And that giant rock, it's the largest standing boulder on Earth, and next to it is a thing called Crystal Mountain, because the whole mountain, it's just chunks of quartz crystal,
Yep. Yep.
right? So we know that these are super vortex areas. And the place where he built the Integratron, he was told to also build it on that spot because of the resources of quartz below ground as well. So yeah, and his little Giant Rock Airport, he worked for Howard Hughes, and Howard Hughes used to fly in there in his little airplane and
Wow.
sit and have a burger and pie with George and his wife. And
Mhm.
he is said to have given the first $20,000 towards building the Integratron. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what about some of the hotspots in the book that people may not have heard about? I guess you'll have something in there about Roswell and Area 51, but what about some of the ones we don't hear about?
Well, Bradshaw Ranch is definitely one that we don't hear about a lot. Um, a lot of people don't really know about Giant Rock. Um, some do and some don't. I kind of find that people don't. But I think a long forgotten one is from the late 1800s, which is the Aurora
Aurora.
alien.
Hmm.
Yes. And so I kind of give a long history of, from the newspaper articles back then, because remember, back then things weren't censored. There was really no military. There was no cover-ups. There was
Hmm.
no nothing. They just reported what happened in the actual newspaper. And so there was this giant, they called them airships,
Yep.
because we had no planes at that time. And over Texas alone, in this year, I think it was maybe 1897. That's right. And but this particular one in Aurora happened on April 17th. And people were just getting up in the morning, you know, working their farms and being outdoors, and they saw this thing just falling from the sky. It went over the town. It
Mm-hmm.
hit Judge Proctor's water tower.
Yep.
That blew up and slammed into the ground. And so people rushed over there. Judge Proctor was out of town, so nobody was home on his farm. And what they found was a lot of wreckage and this very thin being that they described as having lizard-like skin
Mm-hmm.
with black eyes, and it was oozing black blood.
Wow.
And it was wearing a skin tight, on its thin body, silver garment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they actually thought it could have been his skin because it was so tight on the body. And so there's two accounts. There's one account that says that the alien was dead upon you know, when the first person got there.
Yep.
There's another account that says that he was still alive and they took him into the barn to try and revive him, and he died later on that afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he also had some kind of papers with him that had hieroglyphic writings on it.
Yep.
And so anyway, Jim Mars was big into this story as well. And I met Jim several times through George Nuri. And he did a whole documentary on Aurora way back in the day, and they interviewed a lot of witnesses
Right.
and things of that nature. And then later on in shows, like Bill Burns' show, UFO Hunter, they went in with ground penetrating radar to see if there was anything actually there.
Mm-hmm.
And what they got is it was concaved, but there could be something there. But then there were stories from the people that own the cemetery that that Aurora alien was moved a long time ago to protect its integrity.
Right. It was
Right.
from what I heard was that it was basically given a good Christian burial.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Can you imagine?
Yep.
Can you imagine the preacher presiding over this? I even say this in the book. Like, what would his sermon have been? Did they ever talk about extraterrestrials? Did
Mm-hmm.
they ever, right? And what would they have thought about this lizard-like looking being that looks so different from humans, right?
Yep.
I mean, that must have just been fascinating. They did say that all the wreckage was, you know, people took wreckage, they threw a lot away. Nobody knows what happened to the hieroglyphic papers, those type of things. So, but you know, the thing is also in the book, which is really fun, is I give everybody, like for the cemetery, yeah, here's the address of the cemetery. If you want a tour guide and somebody who will really fill you in on the story and take you to all the little other haunts
Yep.
that are around there about the Aurora alien, like a restaurant, a memorial, a this or a that, you can contact these people as
Mm-hmm.
well. And even for like the Bradshaw Ranch, you know, I have a friend of mine. She does tours, and she has something like 6 pairs of night vision binoculars. So she takes small tours out. So
Right.
you can hire her. You can hire the historian Barbara Harris for Giant Rock and go
Mm-hmm.
out to Giant Rock and the Sky Watch and hear a lot of the firsthand stuff from Barbara as well. And then in other stories, um, like we have the coordinates to where George Adamski met Orthon,
Okay. Yep.
where Lonnie Zamora had his alien encounter with the two little beings, where
Mm-hmm.
that exact spot is. where Valiant Thor's spaceship is at Lake Mead, the actual coordinates to that, which I've been to,
Yep.
right, as well. Of course, you're not going to see anything, but they say Dr. Frank always said that it was tucked away in another dimension, but they can see through their windows into this
Right.
dimension, right? So I always thought that that was interesting.
And what one I'm happy to see in there too is the Pascagoula incident,
Oh yeah,
and it's been basically brought back to life in the last couple of years through the efforts of Philip Mantle, and
yes.
Philip and has been working hard on it. And there's I think a 4-part documentary about to go into production
Mhm.
for next year.
Yes, yes, yes. I worked right along with Philip for that section of the book. I, of course, have met Calvin and and spoke to him before I started working on it. And that's just that is one of the most fascinating
Yep.
stories. And I think what's so enigmatic about it is that Calvin will still to this day not talk about what that female alien being looked like,
Mm-hmm.
because he said she was pure evil
Evil.
incarnate, and what she did to him.
Yep. Yep. And
He
he
cannot speak it. He will not speak it.
and I said to Calvin, I said, what would you have done if you were able to move on that table? And he said, I would have punched her in the face. And I said,
Well,
well,
he did.
fair enough.
He did.
Hmm.
He did get free at one point
Yeah.
and did punch her.
But
And then those robots came back in and subdued him.
yeah, I think the fascinating part of that story that gives it so much credence is when the two guys were left alone in the interview room, and the sheriff had the tape recorder under the table, and just let them speak. And when they listened back to the tape, these two guys were just so terrified, and just asking each other, what was that? What did we just go through? And there was no sign of any, of anything being made up. And
Right.
as far as evidence goes, I mean, if that could have passed in a court of law, that was terrific.
Yes, I also got permission to use um, some of Calvin's regression from Bud Hopkins
Right. Okay.
about what that was all about in the book, because that right there, that is really telling, and all of that. But I mean, I tried to get it out of Calvin. I was like, well, why was she evil? What did she look like? And he was like, I will never say it.
Hmm.
I will
Yeah.
never speak it.
Yeah. Said the same to
So
me. Um,
yeah,
Craig, the first part of the book, you name, I think, 35 different specific sites to visit.
right.
Uh, and then the second part, you look at more of regions of North America.
We do. So there's I think 12 of the larger stories, and then we go into the rest of the smaller stories. So for instance, if you are enthralled with Betty and Barney Hill,
Hmm.
uh, we give you the story. I learned a lot more, and I'm friends with Kathleen Marden.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot more by just doing my own research and then calling Kathleen and saying, "Is this true?" And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's true."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And, um, but one of the cool things is that, again, we give you the coordinates of the actual road that they were on, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
you can go and have your own bucket list trip. And the other things that you can do while you're in town there as well. But the other cool thing was that I had no idea about is that Betty donated everything to the local university. So if you wanted to go see the bust of Junior she had made up, or the dress that she wore
Hmm.
that had all the chemical stains and all of those artifacts, you could actually go to the university and actually view them.
Wow. That's
Yeah, I
amazing.
didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you obviously would have got a good guide of all the regions that you researched. I mean, was there one region that particularly stood out as the hotspot of all hotspots?
Yes, for sure. For sure. Two, well, actually two. My first favorite is ECETI Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a galactic airport, basically. I've been there. They have a skywatch area. It's just all like 2 miles of land that goes way out. And then there's some forests, and then Mount Adams is right there, like in its majesty, right?
Wow. Yep.
And so now at night, these mysterious lights go on and off all over the mountain, right? It's not hikers, it's not any of that, because nobody can get to these places, is basically what they say. And they say that every night the lights are in different places,
Yep.
right?
Wow.
So now these are the same kind of mysterious lights like the Marfa lights, and also on a giant mountain plateau at Skinwalker. They get the same phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know what that phenomena is. Um, but um, the oh gosh, what was I
Well,
just going to say? What?
I was just going to ask ECETI. So what location is that?
Mm, that's Washington State by Trout Lake.
Okay.
Right. So when you go there, so you go to their website, I give you all the information in the book, and you make your reservation. And then when you drive up to the gate, they give you a code, and you press in your code, you drive in, and then you just walk over to the Skywatch
Mm-hmm.
area. And again, you want to bring your own chairs, things to keep you warm, because it does get cold there. And if you have night vision binoculars, definitely bring those. They do have one set on the ranch when I was there,
Yep.
and they do let people use them. Um, so there'll be somebody from the ranch that's with everyone in the Skywatch area, and they'll have a laser pointer, and they know what to look for, and they look up and they use a laser and point it, and then they'll say, okay, so let's all mentally connect, and let's ask the ship to move to the left. And then the ship moves to the left,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then move it to the right, move it up and down, right? And then the fun part is when they say, go ahead and power up. And all of a sudden they turn on all the lights, and it turns into this giant bright star that is just like,
Wow.
reverberating like
Yep.
this. It is so fantastic to see. Now, I saw it when I was there. Now, sometimes there you will see one or two ships jetting across the sky, or you could see up to 20 or 30
Gosh.
going across, either with night vision binoculars, or sometimes they're so low you can see them with the naked eye as well,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned 20 or 30 at the one time. I'm just thinking about all those people that say, "Well, I've never seen a UFO. I don't even know if they're real." Well, maybe a trip to the
Yeah.
ECETI Ranch.
Yeah, go to ECETI Ranch. I'm not kidding you. You're almost guaranteed to see something there
Mm-hmm.
every single night. Plus, there are a lot of Bigfoots that live in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the people. So if you go there, you can camp there. You can bring your own camper. You can rent a room in one of the houses. You can do a lot of things. But they don't have bathrooms, and there's only one sort of big shared bathroom, so you have to walk far.
Yep.
So there's a place just outside called Cozy Cabins. That's where I stayed, and it
Mm-hmm.
was great. And it was a hop, skip, and a jump to the ranch. So you kind of have the amenities of home,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But um, there's so many people even on their website that talk about all the things that they've seen, and some of the campers have seen a juvenile Sasquatch, and I think they call him Dalaki. Dalaki is what they've named him.
Right.
So there's apple trees on the ranch, and so they come in to eat the apples and that kind
Okay.
of thing. So
Okay.
yeah,
As
yeah,
long, yeah, that's better than coming in and eating people.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah. No, they say Dalaki is very curious of people,
Mm-hmm.
right? That he's very interested in people, and he doesn't seem to want to do harm or
No.
anything like that. But also, Mount Adams, by the way, there are lights that go in and out of the mountain all the time.
Right.
And so they say that there is a positive extraterrestrial base under the mountain. So what we do is we hypothesize, when they shift the metal or the solid matter into, let's say, the fourth dimension,
Yep.
right? And then it's light here, and they go through solid matter, and then when they get to their destination, they can, go back out and become solid again. It's the same thing with Mount Shasta as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
they would be your prime hotspots.
That's my prime hotspot, and also Sedona,
Sedona.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sedona, like the vortex areas, Bell Rock, Courthouse Butte, Cathedral Rock,
Mm-hmm.
Airport Mesa. You get a big view of one part of town.
Yep.
In the book, I actually put a picture in when I was there. I go there all the time, but when I was there many years ago, I was driving to go to Bell Rock, and all of a sudden I saw this orb, like this big,
Mm-hmm.
metallic, going right along the highway like this, coming towards me.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I grabbed my phone and
Mm-hmm.
I started snapping pictures, and I actually caught it on camera. So
Great.
I put it in the book. Um, but people will see a lot of stuff there. Now, especially if you go to Sedona, night vision binoculars are a must, because you will definitely see stuff with the night vision because they're so high up into the sky. Or take a night vision tour with one of the guides that
Mm-hmm.
I put in the book,
Yep.
because they have, like, one of them, like I said, she has 6 night vision things, and you go out and she tells you stories and that kind of thing, and you can
Yep.
keep looking and and find things. So yeah, last
Okay.
time I was there, I saw 2 of them hauling across the sky.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Craig, is there any danger to visiting some of these areas?
Well, I myself would stay away from Stardust Ranch.
Right.
I would um I would say there is something afoot below Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
I have always felt that there is something down below the ground, and some of the testing that they've done kind of proves that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how are they going to? They can't dig up the whole ranch to find
No.
what's down there. But is it a base? What is going on down there? Because they have sparked saucers to show up and that kind of thing with doing some of their experiments. So I think there is something there that either aliens or the government don't want us to see, or both, if it's a
Yeah.
joint base, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
so I would say those two. Of course, you can't go to Area 51, but I give you a great place that gives tours
Mm-hmm.
of the extraterrestrial highway, the little alien. It's an all-day tour, and they do take you out as far as you could go to Area 51, where you can get out and
Yep.
take pictures and see the trucks and do all those kinds of things. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but and the other one was Gulf Breeze. You
Okay.
remember all the things in Gulf
It's
Breeze? You remember that one? It's
it's
near.
just
Is
up
that
it's
near you?
just up the road about 30 or 40 miles.
Yeah. I mean, there was I can't remember if it was 80s or 90s. I think it was 90s with
Yeah, I think it was early or mid 90s.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, Ed Walters and his wife, and
Hmm.
they captured these sort of beehive looking crafts that would shoot these blue beams down,
Yep.
right? And I do remember a line in his book that stayed with me, that when he saw one of these ships, he could hear and feel and see people in cages crying out to be
Wow.
released,
Wow.
right? Now, here's another interesting thing. Before I knew about that case, or maybe it was after, and I didn't make the connection, was Dr. Frank told me, he said, uh, the commander, which was Val Thor, he always called him the commander. He said, the commander told me once that ships that look like beehives, they are really negative entities. They're negative aliens, and to stay far, far away from
Away.
them, right?
Wow.
And when
Yep.
I saw those craft, I was really quite shocked. Now, what's interesting is, after they moved out, the new owner found, some paper plates made into a model of the
Hmm.
craft, and they said he faked it, and, all of that. They do this a lot with a lot of people who are doing this. So
Yep.
MUFON investigators, they researched everything in Gulf Breeze, and they literally, which I find fascinating, is I'm just going to read you this. All right. So John Schussler, who was then the international director and founding member of MUFON, said about Gulf Breeze that the Pensacola area had experienced over 130 UFO incidents that were seen by over 200 witnesses. MUFON's Donald Ware stated that the Gulf Breeze reports included 135 witnesses. Four of those witnesses reported seeing alien beings, while six reported seeing blue beams, and nine reported missing time, raising the possibility that alien abductions may have taken place. His position statement declares that he was convinced that the UFO sightings were proof of alien visitation. Indeed, the Gulf Breeze area appears to be a super hotspot for these UFO sightings. And although the primary UFO activity ended in 1992, there's still reports of UFO sightings over Gulf Breeze.
I mean, we've got several major Navy and Air Force bases right along this part of the coast, and I mean, it's an air show here every day, but at night, I'm just sitting on the deck, and there may not be a night that goes past where I don't see something, and
Mhm.
and one of the big things here, of course, are the underwater UFOs, and
Yes, yeah, USOs,
yeah,
right?
yeah, a little bit like Southern California. But
Yes, we have a lot here. And then the Shag Harbor incident up
that's right,
in
and that's
Canada.
in the book as well,
That's
Shag
in the
Harbor.
book as well. Yeah, I worked with Chris Stiles, who was the MUFON investigator, former, who went in and reinvestigated it. And boy, did he find some incredible
Hmm.
information.
Wow.
So we've got all that information in the book and what that could possibly be. I think the most fascinating thing about Shag Harbor is a guy, an 18-year-old named Lori, right?
Hmm.
He was there with his girlfriend on the beach, and they saw this thing crash 200 to 300 feet. They all thought it was an airplane. He called the mounted police. They all came out. Everyone thought it was an airplane, and the mounted police, they got a boat and they went out. Rescuers went out in a boat, and as they kept going out, these yellow orange lights, they were sort of bobbing
Hmm.
on the surface, and then as they got closer, they just sunk, and then they moved. They either moved away or they sunk into the depths. They
And
couldn't see them anymore, but all was left was this yellow foam. right? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, Chris, I said, Chris, my God, what was in that foam? Surely somebody got some of that foam to test. And he said, Craig, they reached down with nets, and the minute the foam got in the net, it dissipated. So they got nothing on the foam,
Wow.
because I thought that could definitely be a sure tell sign.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I'll leave the rest of the mystery of all the current stuff that they recently
Mm-hmm.
came up with on that case, which is amazing.
Okay. So the book is called,
The UFO Hotspot Compendium, all the places to visit before you die or are abducted.
and it's available it's available not just on Amazon but elsewhere.
It's if people want to get autographed copies from me, they can go to my website,
Mm-hmm.
autobiography of an anet.com, click on other books.
Yep.
And I'll personalize it and sign it for you. It's available on Amazon in all the categories, Kindle, audio,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Barnes and Noble, and it'll be in Barnes and Noble stores as well. And it's actually, the release date is October 1st. So this weekend, I think it's
Okay.
Saturday, right? Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday. Yep. Fantastic.
Saturday. Yeah.
Craig, before we let you go, what other projects have you got on the drawing board, alien or UFO wise?
Oh man, I gotta tell you, the coolest thing, I am making this into a documentary right now.
Fantastic.
And we are bringing all the ETs to life through CGI and all kinds of other things. We've already done all of our wonderful interviews. I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to have all the same people that it's in every UFO
Mm-hmm.
thing. So we're having actual contactees that are having face to face with extraterrestrials.
Yep.
One has photographs of them that we're allowed to use as well. We've got some hybrids. I mean, there's not a lot known about mantis beings, right?
Mm-hmm. No.
I have always been interested in what are mantis beings. I've had conversations with Yvonne Smith, who does regressions,
Mm-hmm.
and they're always lurking in the background.
Yep.
And anyway, so we've had lots of discussions about that. And Yvonne's in the documentary as well. Um, and but So I have a real mantis hybrid, right? So we also will explain how these hybrids become hybrids in a hybrid section.
Okay.
And throughout my life, I've known several hybrids, and one his father actually was in the military, and they did a DNA exchange. And so there were three types of alien races that went in
Wow.
to his wife's embryo without her knowing it, right? I mean, the military
Mhm.
abduct people too and do
Yep.
things.
Yep.
So we know that. And she's no longer with us. She was one of my dear friends. She looked unique and different. She had aqua eyes. She had this kind of almost like glowing white skin. Her fingers were a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And, and she was extremely spiritual, and really was a true advocate for learning about all the different extraterrestrial races and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we're bringing those kind of things into it. And, so we have a little different thing. We also have Daryl Anka,
Mm-hmm.
who
Yep.
channels Bashar, and he's never really done a documentary ever except for his own.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really going to hear about the Sasani beings and that type of stuff, straight from
Fantastic.
him. So
Fantastic. Well, we did an interview a little while ago on that particular book, and I'm pretty tempted to rerun that again at some stage too in the next few weeks.
yes,
But
yes, definitely rerun it for sure.
so, Craig, always a pleasure to speak with you. You're a hive of information, and I look forward to. In fact, I think you know, when that documentary is ready to go, get in touch and we can chat again.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Craig, thank you, and have a nice rest of the day, and we'll catch up with you shortly.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Craig Campobasso joining us today.